If you've ever visited a movie set, there's this incredibly disorienting moment. You walk down what looks like this bustling historical city street, right?
Oh, yeah. The brickwork looks totally ancient.
Exactly. The shop windows are perfectly aged. But then you take one step around the corner and you realize it's all just a facade.
Right. It's nothing but painted plywood, propped up by like a few 2x4s.
Yeah, and if you tried to lean on one of those brick walls, the entire illusion would just totally collapse under your weight. It's, entirely surface level, designed exclusively for the camera.
Which is actually such a perfect metaphor for the tension we're exploring in today's D-Dive.
It really is. Because for you listening, whether you're, I don't know, trying to lead a team, raise a family, or really just navigate this digital landscape that feels completely obsessed with optics, we are looking at the monument we leave behind.
Right, which is this fascinating collection of essays and aphorisms.
Exactly. And the whole mission today is to unpack the profound difference between being clever and being wise. Because, we live in a world that disproportionately rewards people who build beautiful facades.
Oh, absolutely. But the question is, what happens when we start mistaking that painted plywood for a real foundation?
Right. What's the fallout?
Well, I mean, we end up with a culture of active harm, frankly. There's this big misconception that intelligence without wisdom is just a neutral state, like it's just unfulfilled potential.
Yeah, like it's harmless.
Exactly. But when you look at how human behavior actually plays out, highly effective cleverness that is divorced from deep character is actually destructive.
Because it prioritizes the shiny thing over the real thing.
Right. It prioritizes the immediate, visible win over the quiet, enduring substance that, actually holds a society together.
So to ground this, I want to bring in this quote from the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. It sounds incredibly simple at first. He wrote, "Commitment is an act, not a word."
Oh, man. Yeah.
Right. But when you map that onto modern life, it is just a devastating critique.
It really cuts right through the collective self-deception we all engage in. Because think about how much of our daily energy goes into words and images.
Oh, totally. We have personal brands, carefully curated social media profiles.
Heavily workshopped corporate mission statements. We just generate these endless sound bites designed to trigger like an emotional resonance. And we do it long before anyone can actually examine the logic beneath them.
Yeah. And Sartre is reminding us that absolutely none of that counts.
None of it.
Good
The
thing.
universe only recognizes the action.
Okay, let's unpack this in real terms.
Yeah.
Because from the outside, the clever person and the wise person often look completely identical.
Oh, for sure. They're both highly capable. They both get things done.
Right. So how do we actually spot the difference in the wild?
I think it comes down to their internal compass. So the clever person approaches a complex situation and asks, what can I do?
Like an evaluation of their own power and capability.
Exactly. But the wise person pauses, reads the exact same room, and asks, what should I do? And how is this action actually going to land on the people around me?
See, that distinction immediately makes me think of, like, corporate environments. You walk into a company lobby and they have this brilliant, poetic mission statement plastered in 50-foot frosted glass letters.
The clever words.
The clever words. But then you talk to the employees and you find out the daily culture is just a toxic nightmare.
Right. The daily grind, how management treats the staff, that is the actual act.
Exactly. But I have to ask, if the distinction between an empty facade and a real structure is so obvious when we finally look closely, why does society continually reward cleverness?
Mostly because cleverness is highly visible. It hijacks our attention. As humans, our brains are incredibly susceptible to what we can see right in front of us.
The shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And the sources have this stunning historical case study that perfectly illustrates this psychological blind spot. It takes us back to 1984 into the CBS newsroom with veteran correspondent Leslie Stahl.
Oh, right. And real quick, looking at this completely objectively for you listening, stripping away all the politics just to examine the pure mechanics of mass communication here, this event is an absolute masterclass in how human attention works. I'm going to be super clear. We are not taking a political side. We're endorsing any views here.
Right, absolutely. We're just looking at the communication strategy. So Stahl had put together what she believed was this tough, rigorous piece of journalism about the Ronald Reagan administration.
It was what, a 4.5-minute broadcast?
Yeah, specifically designed to expose how the administration was using staged, highly emotional imagery to kind of distract the public from the negative impacts of their policies.
Right.
So she airs the piece, feeling really proud that she'd done her journalistic duty, and shortly after, her phone rings. It's a senior White House official.
And he doesn't call to yell at her.
No, he calls to thank her.
Which is wild. She thought she just aired a devastating critique.
Totally bewildered, she asks him, "Did you listen to a word I just said?" And the official replies, "Leslie, when you're showing 4.5 minutes of great pictures of Ronald Reagan, no one listens to what you say."
Wow.
And then he delivers the ultimate punchline. He asks her, "What are you going to believe? The facts or your eyes?"
That is just darkly comedic. The bluntness of that question is terrifying.
What's fascinating here is that he was entirely correct about the psychology. This brings to mind Robert Greene's analysis in The Art of Seduction.
Because the Reagan communications team wasn't really made up of traditional political operatives, right?
Right. They were largely people with backgrounds in advertising and marketing. They intuitively understood something that Stahl's journalistic training hadn't prepared her for. In the battle between content and form almost always wins.
Because the brain processes images like thousands of times faster than audio.
Precisely. Greene refers to this dynamic as the domain of the non-player, someone who uses visual effects and aesthetic form to manipulate an audience, rather than engaging honestly with the substance.
So they knew if the backdrop was perfectly pastoral and the lighting was majestic, the audience's emotional processing would just override her critical voiceover.
Exactly. Greene warns that our only defense against this kind of sophisticated cleverness is a rigorous, disciplined focus on facts over form.
Wait, I have to push back here. Is all visual presentation inherently manipulative?
Hmm.
Like, if I spend an hour picking out a tailored suit and making sure my body language is impeccable for a job interview, am I using cleverness to mask the facts?
That's a really good question.
Like, am I being a manipulator, or am I just playing the necessary game of human communication?
That is the crucial line to draw. Making something visually appealing isn't inherently evil. It becomes problematic. It turns into what we can call the trap of the visible when the form is entirely self-obsessed.
Right, when it exists solely to mask a lack of truth.
Exactly. If you wear a great suit as a communication tool to show respect for the interview process, that's pro-social. But if you have absolutely zero skills and you're using a flashy suit and a charismatic smile to actively distract the interviewer from your empty resume.
Then the form is functioning as deception.
Right. The Reagan comms team was executing their strategy brilliantly, but at its root, the sources argue it was a form of self-obsession dressed up as public service. It prioritized the immediate visual win over the underlying reality.
And if that story shows cleverness playing out on a massive global scale, there is a perfect, almost painful counterexample of cleverness playing out in the smallest, most intimate setting imaginable.
Oh, in the backseat of a car in the 1970s?
Yes, the Jeff Bezos story.
This is such a classic example.
Yeah. So a young Jeff Bezos is on a road trip with his grandparents. He's like 10 years old, clearly a brilliant kid.
Yeah.
And an anti-smoking public service announcement comes on the radio.
Throwing out some grim health metrics about minutes of life lost per puff of a cigarette.
Exactly. And Bezos, wanting to flex his intellectual horsepower, sits back there and does the mental math. He calculates exactly how many years of life his grandmother has lost to her smoking habit.
Oh, boy.
And he leans forward and proudly announces this clever, flawless arithmetic to her.
He was entirely expecting a pat on the head, right? Praise for his genius.
Yeah, but instead, his grandmother just bursts into tears.
Which prompts his grandfather to pull the car over to the side of the highway. He takes young Jeff out of the car, looks at him, and delivers a quiet lesson that Bezos later said stuck with him for his entire life.
What was the line?
His grandfather said, "Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than clever."
Man, that hits so hard. It totally flips the script on what we naturally value.
It strikes at the absolute core of the moral hierarchy most of us are raised in. The author Ryan Holiday talks about this dynamic a lot in Daily Dad.
Right, because from the time we are toddlers, we are heavily praised for intelligence, getting the right answer, being quick, being witty.
That gets you immediate attention. Gold stars, academic tracking. Because of that reward system, cleverness actually becomes the default easy path when we crave validation.
But kindness is different.
Kindness requires friction. It requires the deliberate, effortful act of modeling another human being's interior world before you open your mouth. Holiday observes that if traits like wit and intelligence are unbalanced with empathy, they form a wicked and lonely combination.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. Are we supposed to suppress our intelligence just to spare people's feelings?
Well,
Because young Jeff Bezos was factually right about the smoking. The math was flawless. Shouldn't the truth matter, especially when it involves someone's health?
the lesson there isn't that intelligence is wrong or that facts don't matter. The lesson is that how that intelligence lands is the true measure of your character.
Ah, so it's about the intent behind the action.
Exactly. Was 10-year-old Bezos doing that complex math because he had a deep, empathetic desire to help his grandmother quit smoking and improve her longevity?
Not at all. He was doing it for his own ego. He wanted to show off the shiny facade of his brain.
Right. It's the difference between self-obsession and genuine service. Kindness requires Sartre's commitment to the act, the quiet, difficult choice to consider the fragile human being on the receiving end of your cleverness.
And that idea that true kindness and wisdom require quiet, unseen effort, it actually scales up in a fascinating way. Because if cleverness is flashy and visible, wisdom often builds things we never even notice.
This brings us to Seth Godin's concept, right?
Godin calls it invisible architecture to illustrate how unseen commitment literally builds the modern world.
Godin has a brilliant way of forcing us to look at the historical substrate we take completely for granted. He highlights these seemingly mundane innovations that quietly revolutionize society.
Yeah, he provides this very quirky list of commercial milestones. He talks about Josiah Wedgwood inventing mass-produced china back in 1759. He brings up Ada Lovelace's foundational work in computational math in the 1800s. And then he mentions things like John Wanamaker inventing the retail price tag, the creation of the corrugated steel shipping container.
And toll-free 1-800 numbers. Now, none of those things sound particularly thrilling.
No, not at all.
But Godin's punchline connects all of those disparate, unglamorous historical acts directly to you, the listener, sitting here today.
How so?
Because of that specific invisible architecture, you can go online right now, order a highly niche product, let's say waterproof bone conduction headphones, pay the equivalent of two 18th century dollars, and have them magically appear on your doorstep tomorrow morning.
Which is objectively insane when you stop to think about the logistics required to make that happen.
It is a miracle of compounding invisible acts. Take John Wanamaker and the price tag. Before Wanamaker, retail was an adversarial negotiation.
Right, you walked into a store, the clerk sized up your clothes, guessed your income, and just quoted you a price.
Exactly. Wanamaker put a physical price tag on an item, meaning a child would pay the exact same price as a wealthy banker. He wasn't making a flashy speech about equality. He was quietly building a baseline of commercial trust.
And Ada Lovelace is an even deeper example. She was looking at early mechanical calculating machines that everyone else just thought were fancy abacuses for crunching ledgers.
But she realized the machine could manipulate symbols, not just numbers. She essentially conceptualized software before hardware even existed.
Which brings in a beautiful aphorism from the sources by the artist Paul Klee, who said, "Art does not reproduce the visible, it makes visible."
Yes. Lovelace didn't just do math. She made computational logic visible for future generations. Wanamaker made commercial trust visible. These were foundational acts of commitment that didn't demand the spotlight.
You know what this makes me think of? The internet itself.
Oh.
We hold these beautiful, sleek glass smartphones in our hands. That sleek glass is the clever, visible part that gets all the applause at tech keynotes. But we completely ignore the thousands of miles of incredibly ugly, thick undersea cables laid across the freezing ocean floor that actually make the internet function.
That's a great analogy.
But my question is, if laying those undersea cables or building invisible architecture in our own lives is so unglamorous, how do you stay motivated?
It's tough.
Right. The Reagan comms team got immediate daily validation. How do you keep quietly building when no one is clapping?
It requires a total paradigm shift in how we view daily effort. There's a quote from the poet Robert Frost that acts as a blueprint here. He wrote, "There is no way but through."
Wow. It's incredibly austere.
No life hacks.
No jumping over the obstacle.
Nope. Not figuring out a clever, heavily marketed way around it, not finding a visual frame to make the obstacle look smaller, just, well, through. You pair this with what coaches often call the athlete's creed. It strips away all the romanticism of genius and inspiration. It says that becoming a great player is simply about always being first.
First to practice. First to do the extra rep.
First to meetings. First to speak up in the film room, and first to make eye contact. None of that is glamorous. It is simply the daily, repeated choice to be present.
It is Sartre's act, lived out in the most mundane, repetitive way possible.
Exactly.
But wait, let me pause you there. Because I'm thinking about the legendary strengths coach Dan John, who has a famous rule in the source material: more is not better. Better is better.
Oh, definitely.
If we are always the first to practice, always doing the extra rep, always grinding through, aren't we just mindlessly piling on inputs? How do we reconcile this intense mandate of going through with the very real danger of completely burning ourselves out?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is where discernment comes in, which is the hallmark of wisdom. Dan John's quote is the vital governor on Robert Frost's engine.
Okay, I like that.
Building invisible architecture isn't about blind accumulation. It's not about doing every possible task until your adrenal glands give out.
Right. It's about identifying the right necessary tasks.
Yes, and doing it exceptionally well, even when absolutely no one is watching. The commitment to quality over mere quantity is what prevents burnout. It's knowing which wall to push through.
Okay, so up to this point, everything we've talked about, Sartre's commitment as an act, the athlete's grind, pushing through the obstacle, it all generates this very intense, forward-leaning activist energy.
It does.
But there's a counterbalance to all this striving in the sources. The spiritual teacher, Anthony DeMello, has a parable that completely reorients this entire conversation.
Ah, the fish in the ocean. It is the great corrective to the modern obsession with solving our own lives.
I love this story. So, a seeker comes to a wise teacher and asks for help to find God or meaning or enlightenment, and the teacher just flatly says no.
He says no one can help with that.
The seeker is confused and asks why, and the teacher replies, for the exact same reason that no one can help a fish find the ocean.
It is such a profound shift in perspective. DeMello is pointing out that you cannot directly pursue the thing you are already inside.
Right.
If you are desperately searching for meaning or deep connection or warmth of heart, you are treating your life like a math problem to be solved. And you can't solve that kind of problem with cleverness, and you can't even solve it by grinding through it.
The frantic search itself is the misunderstanding.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? It's like using your phone's GPS to frantically search for the car you're already sitting in.
That's exactly what it's like.
But practically speaking, how on earth are you supposed to balance those two realities? How do you balance Frost's demand to take action and go through with DeMello's warning that searching is completely missing the point?
Well, there's a beautiful anonymous framework in the text that addresses this tension. Wow, thanks, or how, when communicating with the creator.
Think about our default mode. It is almost always how.
Right, the clever problem-solving active mode. How do I fix my career? How do I get better? How do I optimize my morning routine?
We're obsessed with how.
But the reality of the ocean, the reality of existence, suggests that awe, which is the wow, and gratitude, the thanks, are often much more appropriate responses.
So wisdom is simply knowing which situation you are in.
Exactly. It's knowing when you need to put your head down and build the invisible architecture, and when you need to stop striving, let go of the exhausting need to be clever, and just swim in the ocean you're already in.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this entire deep dive. There is an old epitaph that used to be commonly inscribed on tombstones in the 18th century. And it reads, "Verses on tombstones are but idly spent. The living character is the monument."
It ties every single thread together. The clever verses carved into the stone, that's the Leslie Stahl broadcast with the Reagan pictures.
That's young Jeff Bezos doing the math in the back seat.
It's the shiny facade on the movie set. And it all eventually fades. The rain washes it away. What actually lasts, the true monument, is the invisible architecture you leave behind in the people around you.
And you build that monument through repeated, unglamorous acts of kindness and discernment.
And this doesn't just apply to massive world-changing innovations like Ada Lovelace's computing logic. It applies to the smallest, most granular moments of our day.
Things like the aphorisms at the end of the text. Be the reason someone smiles today. Do one thing every day that makes you happy. Your great happiness is based on the warmth of your heart.
Right. In the context of everything we've discussed, these aren't just cheesy, inspirational quotes you scroll past on Instagram.
They are the actual daily expressions of Sartre's act.
Mhm.
They represent the constant moment-by-moment choice between being clever and being kind.
Because it has always been harder to be kind than to be clever. But the harder thing is the only thing that structurally holds weight. Which leaves us with a final thought to consider for everyone listening. We've spent this time talking about grand historical monuments, the manipulative traps of visual media, and the invisible architecture of society.
But what does your monument look like right now?
Exactly. We live in a digital ecosystem that is perfectly algorithmically optimized to reward your most clever, highly visible outputs. Your quick hot takes, your curated vacation photos, your performative outrage.
It's all just plywood and paint.
So, in total defiance of all of that, what is one entirely invisible act of kindness you can do today that completely rejects the need to be seen?
Are you building a facade for the cameras
Mm.
or a structure that can actually shelter the people around you? So next time you're tempted to drop a clever one-liner or prioritize the optics over the reality, ask yourself, are you building a monument or just carving another useless verse? Catch you next time.